So Tesla stock has absolutely been going parabolic, and we definitely have to talk about it because there's this huge dichotomy of what's going to happen next for Tesla stock. See, on one end of the spectrum, you have the school of thought that says, look, the price action relative to the fundamentals of the business are absurd, and we're at these frothy levels, which means that we're going to have a huge U-turn coming soon. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have many market participants saying, no, 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 wait a minute. Tesla stock is just a few dollars off from its all-time highs, and it's likely to continue rallying up. And so in this video, I want to kind of just touch on what are my thoughts in regards to the price action for Tesla, where do I see things going, and just kind of break down what's actually taking place. Now, I just want to provide a quick reminder that it's very common to see stocks kind of deviate from the fundamentals and in fact continue going up, right? Because at times you're gonna have these periods where there's this discrepancy between price and value, and even at extreme optimisms, that's very likely to take place, especially since we're seeing the broader markets actually go up. I mean, just look at the S&P 500, look at Palantir, look at all these companies. Everything is pretty much moving upwards. And so sometimes the technical trends, the market sentiment, or external factors could drive a stock far beyond what the underlying business performance might suggest. And so, of course, as we often do, I want to go ahead and hop into my laptop so we could kind of break down what's taking place. Now, before we do so, just a friendly reminder to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, or if you guys could please hit that like button, as it really does help out with the YouTube algorithm. But with that said, let's go ahead and hop into my laptop. So as we mentioned earlier, there's been this huge run up in regards to the price action that we ended up seeing primarily take place after the recent results from the election. Now, to some degree, we could say, okay, this is likely due to the idea of deregulation, which could be a huge beneficial factor for Tesla stock, of course, when we're talking about FSD. But from a fundamental perspective, we haven't really seen much change. It hasn't been like the consensus for price action, for the price targets, or the earnings has changed. And so this kind of suggests that this run-up that we've seen, this impressive run-up, is being driven by a strong technical factor and market dynamics. And as a market technician, you're going to go ahead and layer over many different studies to go ahead and see, well, what kind of indicator could kind of tell the story of what's taking place, right? And of course, you're going to layer in some quantitative factors as well. But one of the things I saw was when I put in the RSI, the relative strength index, it does indicate that yes, Tesla is slightly overbought, reflecting strong buying pressure as the stock continues its upward trajectory. We're sitting at 65.32, but typically an RSI above 70 suggests overbought conditions, and this hasn't deterred buyers away, right? And so let's actually toggle over to a weekly time frame so we can kind of see, right? This kind of gives us the whole story. If you guys see, this was 2019, then to 2020 we had the pandemic, and then of course all the stimulus money coming into the markets. We saw Tesla stock hit the new all-time highs at 414, and we're pretty much right around the corner. And so one of the other studies that I layered over was the ADX, right? So when you take a look at the ADX, this kind of tells a pretty interesting story because the average directional index, that's what the ADX is, kind of further confirms the strength of Tesla's current trend. So one thing that we see here is that the ADX is sitting at 44.47. Now, with values above 25, that indicates a robust trend that shows no sign of weakening. Now, we have to understand that the ADX just shows the strength in the trend. It doesn't tell you whether it's a bearish or bullish trend. And so that's where you would have the DMI, right? And what the DMI does, the directional movement index, it adds insight by kind of giving us the distinction between trend to direction, right? So the DMI consists of two components, right? It's going to be DI plus and DI minus, right? And so what we see is, of course, the strong trend. We see that it's obviously, and of course, layered in with the price action, but we could see that there's this big divergence here that shows us that it's really due to this really big bullish trend that we're seeing, right? But beyond technical indicators, right, this kind of just tells us what's going on. But there's other market dynamics that could really influence the price action for Tesla. And then, of course, I want to talk about what I think is likely to take place next. But beyond the technical indicators, the options market dynamics, that has honestly played a pivotal role in Tesla's recent surge as well, because we end up getting what's called like a gamma squeeze. See, we see here and let's go ahead and scroll over to seeing like the volume here. We see that there's this aggressive buying for the out of the money call options, right? Many of these ended up moving into in the money, right? But we still have a lot of aggressive kind of volume in the out of the money call options relative to what we see in the put side of the options chain. And so what that tells us is that, we're seeing this aggressive buying. And so what does that mean? Well, you end up getting what's called like a gamma squeeze, because what ends up happening is dealers who sold those call options, they have to hedge their exposure by buying Tesla shares, right? And so that further drives up the stock price, right? I'm sure many have been familiar with a short squeeze, but this is essentially what a gamma squeeze is. And so this feedback loop, it amplifies the upward movement, right? So you have people buying a ton of calls. We have the dealers having to go ahead and buy shares to go ahead and make up and hedge for the calls. And what does that do? That pushes the price upwards. And so one thing we have to kind of acknowledge is that this is really with the options that are going to be expiring soon. For example, if we peel out and go to the 20th of December, we don't see that crazy amount of strong buying into the out of the money calls like we do for this week. And so that could end up changing things. But what we're seeing is, of course, a lot of buying activity in the call options, which is driving this gamma squeeze. But what is causing this? Well, it could just simply be trend, right? And I know that's kind of hard to understand, especially if you're a traditional kind of fundamental market participant. And I'm someone who I like to synthesize multiple different perspectives. I don't just look at the charts. I like to look at the fundamentals and understand what the business is doing as well. But you have to kind of acknowledge that sometimes you'll see the business aspect of a company not really change and not really do much, but still things kind of push upwards. And that just leads to kind of what we're seeing from just a behavioral aspect of the market, right? You have to understand that there's behavioral finance. And when you end up seeing, seeing this price action, let's look at the SPY, the market hitting new all-time highs, there's this optimism. Everyone's excited that Wall Street, is pushing upwards. The S&P 500 is hitting new all-time highs almost every single day. We're seeing from a macro perspective, inflation isn't showing signs of a big threat. We're hearing a lot of like policies being discussed that would be favorable for a lot of these mega cap companies as well as the smaller caps companies, right? Because when we talk about deregulation, that benefits a lot of the smaller companies who might have not been able to navigate a more stricter environment. But when you have deregulation, that may allow them to kind of not have to spend so much on lawyer fees or whatever costs they had to go ahead and come up with to, navigate with new products to deliver to the market. And then layering on top of that, you have monetary policy easing from the Federal Reserve. And so we're having kind of this very euphoric moment with the markets, right? So when you see the general markets pushing up like this, you're going to see these, stocks that are very volatile like Tesla also push upwards. And then one of the things you have to understand is that, when a trend is going up, you don't want to fight it. You may say, look, the fundamentals don't justify this, but you're not going to fight the strength in the trend. It does not make sense. If the stock is going up, don't fight it. Now, me personally, I do have exposure to Tesla in my long-term portfolio. I haven't been buying more shares of Tesla. I've been kind of riding it up. I've been buying more shares of Palantir. That's something that I talked about within the Push and Profit private group, as Palantir has pushed up higher than Tesla. I know I'm going to get some hate. Oh, why are you not buying more Tesla? Look, if for to each your own, you should only trade and invest in whatever you see value in. And I just have been seeing more value with Palantir. And Palantir is another one where the fundamentals, yes, they did recently change after we had the earnings that we had back on the 4th of November, but we are way higher than where we should be. But it's kind of your classic just trend strength here. And so going back to Tesla, right, because I don't want to deviate to Palantir, right, but from a fundamental perspective, Tesla's proximity to its all-time highs reflect this kind of market confidence bolstered by the ability that people have for it to scale the electric vehicle production profitability, is especially even without reliance on government subsidies. And so this structural advantage sets Tesla apart from a lot of the competitors who struggle to achieve profitability on a scale or at scale. And so with both technical and fundamental factors aligning, again, the fundamental aspect is kind of weaker here, but the technical picture and other underlying market dynamics are pretty strong at play. And so Tesla remains in a strong position. And although in the short term we may end up seeing Tesla, let's actually go to the weekly time frame, kind of get close to, it'll be really interesting to see what Tesla does at 4:15. In fact, I am going to just put a little line here, and I'm going to set an alert later on so I could monitor that, because of course if we do break new all-time highs, well, that will further cause some more kind of this euphoric feeling where we can end up seeing Tesla stock even push up higher, but we may end up also seeing some profit taking as well, right? There's been a lot of bag holders who've been holding Tesla for the last 3 years and hasn't made new all-time highs, and even if they did, dollar cost average, they still may be at a loss. So as we climb higher, we may see the trend and the strength in the trend kind of die down, but it'll be interesting to see. Now, I also want to highlight that when we're looking at the volume profile, little volume relative to price, right? That's different from volume relative to time. And the volume relative to price, when it's low, that means that if there's buying pressure, well, we're going to see those big candlesticks, right? Kind of just like what we saw during this time in 2020, little volume relative to price. So it's going to be very interesting for Tesla. I think we may end up getting really close to the previous all-time highs. But of course, I don't have a crystal ball. If we do break new all-time highs, then of course we'll likely continue going higher as the momentum is going to kind of just amplify even further, right? Everyone's going to say, oh, Tesla broke new all-time highs. It's having an NVIDIA moment. But I do kind of want to put some caution out there that, things are a bit frothy from a fundamental perspective, and we end up oftentimes deviating from the fundamentals, but getting a mean reversion back to the fundamentals over time, right? It's, we'll have these sporadic moments where we're far away, but eventually we kind of come in line with what the underlying business is doing, what the fundamentals actually suggest, right? With the discounted cash flow models. But with that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Just kind of wanted to share my thoughts on Tesla. Make sure to check out this video right over here, and I'll see you guys on that next video. Take care, guys.